What's good, everybody? Welcome to Believe in Celtics. I'm your host, Warren Shaw. Alongside me is the great Gary Washburn. As always, we are hosting resources for everything Boston Celtics this season and all seasons. Gary is fresh back from the West Coast. Had that California sunshine on Christmas Day. Celtics get 2 LA wins. Gary, how are you, my guy? Good to see you.
Really good, really good. Spending West Coast, Chris on the West Coast last week, but way to go for the Celtics. Go 3-1. Some interesting games, a lot to talk about. Kind of cleaning up in LA and then getting the Kings after that Warriors loss. So a really, I would say a positive trip. It could have gone a little bit better, but for the Celtics, but for them to come back and beat Sacramento on the back-to-back by 25 points, then beat the Clippers by 37. I know Kawhi was not in that game, but still you're talking about, George, Westbrook, and Harden all played in that game. And then, to kind of put away the Lakers without much suspense, a game they won by 11. It didn't go down to the wire. I think, Warren, maybe last year Celtics team kind of plays around with that game a little bit much, and then it ends up being suspenseful and maybe going down to the final minutes. But this one, they took care of business, and then now you get 2 days off, and our friends come in from Detroit who, they don't say
that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, you don't say too many positive things about Detroit because they haven't been very good over the last decade or so. But it's at an all-time low, and now they're making all the headlines for all the wrong reasons.
All the wrong reasons, indeed. And we will absolutely get to that here a little bit in the show. But as always, got to do our plugs. Make sure you follow my guy, Gary, at GWashburnGlobe on X. You follow me at Shaw Sports NBA as well, too. Make sure you follow at Believe or at Believe Network. Make sure you give the show a 5-star rating or whatever your podcast platform is out there. And we're going to switch things up here a little bit this week on Believe in Celtics. New rules, if you will. We're going to, because Gary and I, we're aficionados of the NBA. So we feel like it's disingenuous to only talk about Celtics. We can give you some conversation and our opinions that are things that are happening around the league, maybe even as they relate to the Celtics to some degree. But in this case, we're going to kind of start off with some news that's kind of burning in the X. I want to say Twitter, but in the X atmosphere, if you will. And Gary, what do you make about the Kevin Durant potential situation in Phoenix? Are you hearing these rumors that he's unhappy? Bradley Beal has been injured. And all this stuff, everywhere he goes, turmoil seems to follow. What are you hearing out there in these NBA streets when it comes to Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's surprised. I mean, they just haven't played well. They're a 500 team. Bradley Beal's played 6 games. Durant at 35, coming off a torn Achilles a few years ago, is the most durable player out of the 3. Because Booker's also missed some games, and I just think that. I kind of think we all knew that it was going to be, you could put them together and they're a juggernaut now. But Beal is Beal's been a guy who's been hurt the last few years. He had the wrist injury. I think he had a hamstring that took him out a couple years ago. He's a guy who's just becoming often injured. And when you have that guy, and I covered a guy like that, where it kind of crept, it was a major injury for a guy like Gordon Hayward. When he had the broken leg, and I was there for that. He was extremely durable in his years in Utah. Once he got to Boston, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy consistently. And I think that might be what happening to Bill. And I think with Kevin Durant, I'm sure he's just frustrated. They're not playing well. They lost the other night to Dallas. I think we all knew their bench wasn't going to be that strong when you make all those trades. You give up all the picks and you give up guys like Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, and you're replacing them, with guys who are maybe not as good, the Okogis and the Metus, and guys that haven't really done much in other places, but maybe you're giving them a shot. It just isn't going to work. And they never, they don't really have much of a backup point guard. They kind of, dismissed Cam Payne, who's now in Milwaukee.
Yep.
They don't have that real wing, they Grayson Allen, who I think is done okay for them, and they've got Yurkic, who's had his moments, but they're just, to me, they're an average team in the West, and that's what their record says. I don't see anything, Warren, extraordinary, so I understand why Kevin's frustrated, but he can't, you don't want to be Harden-like here, right? You don't want to be the guy over your career who asked out of every time it got tough, you got going.
Yeah.
And he got out of Oklahoma City because he wanted to win. He goes to the rival. He gets a lot of flack for that. Then he's like, well, I don't like this thing with Draymond. I'm getting out of Golden State. I want my own team. It's Steph's team. It'll never be my team. Didn't work in Brooklyn. That was supposed to be the place. Now will get me out of here. I'm ready to go to Phoenix, a new start back on the West Coast, a team that has never won a title. And now, well, I got problems here now too. Like you got to say, come on, Kevin. You got to stick it out somewhere. And I just think this is what you created. And you got to hope that Beal gets back from that ankle injury, and maybe the second half of the season, the last 35, 40 games, you can put together a nice run and maybe getting one top 4 seeds. But for now, they're an average ball club, Warren.
Gary, let me ask you this. I mean, just so are you confirming that that's something that you are hearing out there as well, too, that he is frustrated? Because, I mean, it's reported, but he hasn't said that.
I don't know. I'm not saying he's asked for a trade. I think he's unquestionably frustrated. I think that the fact that they just haven't matched up well with some of the top teams. I mean, they lost to the Lakers in the play-in tournament. They had they fell behind on Christmas night against the Mavericks. Like, the Suns are an average team, and we can, talk about, potentially, but this is not on potential. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the best team in the West right now, and that's the facts. Now, did we expect that? No. Did we think that could it even out once the season continues and ends? Yeah, but there's a lot of teams coming for that number 1 spot or coming for the playoffs. I mean, we can talk about, the Memphis Grizzlies, 4 in a row since Josh come back. They're 4.5 out of the play-in. We laughed at them in the first, 25 games, and they were a joke, and they're done. They're making a run. Like, teams are coming up now. I mean, Oklahoma City, Houston is a team. They're 15 and 13. Like Phoenix is in a big group of teams that are basically, average. And they're going to have to figure out, are they going to be above average and try to get a top 4 seed, or staying at 6, 7, 8 range where they're maybe in the play-in, or they're playing on the road in the first round.
Yeah, and unfortunately their plan has not come together. Obviously, not having Beal is just a huge part, because that's what makes it work. Being able to have 2 of those 3 guys out there on a consistent basis, and when you just only have 2 of those guys on a pseudo consistent basis, I wouldn't even say on a consistent basis, that makes it especially tough for the Phoenix Suns to enact the progress that they expected to have. I think at this stage of the season, we all walked in thinking they're going to probably have a historical offense, but it was all predicated on them all being there. So it's been really, really tough sledding, but I think it is interesting to hear that Durant is frustrated, but you just don't know exactly what that means, because yeah, you're right. They're a 500 team, didn't expect to be 500, but like you said, is he asking out? No, that's not where it's at. He's just frustrated that the situation hasn't gone the way that it has, that they expected it to. But is there another move for them to make? And the answer to that really is not really. There's just, they don't have any more assets to kind of do anything. So they just need those guys to get healthy and then see. I think they'll still be scary and have some say in how the Western Conference is determined, but that will not happen unless they have all 3 of those guys. Let's transition now, G, to the Lakers, a team who the Celtics played recently on Christmas Day, and we'll talk about that game in a little bit. But more so, we've been hearing the rumors ever since they started to struggle. Then they kind of righted the track a little bit for the in-season tournament, won the in-season tournament, and then won, and then have lost, I think, 5 of their last 7 games or something to that effect, right? Changed their starting lineup, going all big. Gabe Vincent is now out for 6 to 8 weeks. He came back and is, promptly left again. They were in the Zach LaVine, I wouldn't even call them sweepstakes, but they were in the Zach LaVine sniffing around to see if that would make sense, whether that be Caruso, whether that be DeRozan. But now Shams comes and drops at Dejounte Murray from the Atlanta Hawks might be a trade target. Now, you've been in this game a long time. And when I say this game, this writing game and understanding what teams are trying to put out there, who's putting this out there about Dejounte Murray? Because that seems to be coming out of left field for me. Murray doesn't fit the quintessential shooter that LeBron needs around him. So he does the play creation, I guess, but it's a really weird, kind of a strange name other than the clutch, link that's there between Dejounte and LeBron. Where is this even coming from?
It might be that clutch link. And it might be the fact that you kind of look around the league, Warren, and it hasn't worked in Atlanta. The Hawks are an average ball club, and the Hawks are 12-18. I mean, and they've been mostly healthy, right? I mean, I don't think they've. I mean, I know DeAndre Hunter's been out. They've had some knickknacks, but this is
Jalen
a team.
Johnson too.
Yeah, this is Jalen Johnson, but not Trey and not Dejounte. They've been mostly Clint Capella. I think has been mostly healthy. Like this is a team that's 6 games under 500 and just got passed by Chicago. We ripped Chicago. Chicago, I think, was off to a 5-14 start. Now they're 14-18, so they're playing good ball. They're without Levine, which is another interesting note to talk about. But the Hawks are sinking, and they got to figure out what to do. Their defense has just been terrible. The Quinn Snyder effect is not kicked in. I think people thought once they had that strong series or that 6-game series with the Celtics, and they were going to, build off that and then come back and have a really good season, be maybe a contender for maybe the 4th or 5th seed. And, they are out of the playoffs with the season into today, 30 games in. And so they got to figure out what to do in Atlanta. Is the Murray thing going to work? And then if you're the Hawks, I think you'll be open to that. Austin Reeves, maybe get some young, fresh legs in there, get some more scoring, maybe get a defender. Maybe if you want to pry Jared Vanderbilt, or I know Hachimura is a guy that, and I'm not crazy about Hachimura. I mean, I think he's okay. I think, being a lottery pick, and I think people expected him in Washington to be kind of a cornerstone that never worked out. Now he's kind of a 4th or 5th option with the Lakers. Do you give him more of a responsibility? And does the salaries match if you add him and a guy like Reeves or something like that? Like, there's some possibilities here, and I think the Lakers should consider it. I seen the Lakers the other night, Warren. Like, they have a lot of guys, right? Rob Pelinka's put together a lot of guys. Okay, the Vanderbilts, the Torian Princes, our friend D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, Hachimura, Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, but guys who don't really make an overall impact. Guys who have all bounced around the league, except for Reeves, obviously, who's turned into a really good player. But guys who have bounced around the league, been here, been there, been depended on to be a cornerstone, guys who have been lottery picked. They just don't have that number 3 guy. And I just thought, and that was a perfect example of the Celtic game, Warren, where AD was unstoppable. 40 points, I think 13, 14 boards, protected the rim. But the Celtics said, yeah, AD, get yours. LeBron was tired. LeBron had to go and score 40 points for them to beat Oklahoma City in the last game of that road trip that they called kind of a must-win. They put all their chips into that game, came back on Christmas Day, and LeBron didn't have much left. And that's the byproduct of being 38, almost 39. He is still a top 2 to 3 player in the league. We all know that. Okay, we can argue that if you think he's 3 or 2, or maybe somebody might say 4. But what he does for that team is there's no comparison to anyone in the history of the league, what he does at age 30, almost 39 for his team. And maybe you could put a Tom Brady if you want to go to the NFL and guys, in other sports. But in the NBA, have never seen this. Have never seen the 38-year-old be the number 1 option on his team. Because I think what Kobe retired at, I think at 38, 37, 38, and he was struggling with injuries or whatever. So you could maybe put a Kobe comparison there, but that team didn't have championship aspirations. That team was kind of just going through the motions. So if you're the Lakers, they didn't have it. LeBron didn't have it that day, and there was nobody else to really pick up the slack. Torian Prince had 5 threes, but Hachimura was 2 for Hachimura, I think, took 9 3-pointers. Why? D'Angelo Russell comes in, hits a couple of jumpers, but I mean, someone was asking me what I thought of D'Angelo Russell, and I just think just a waste of time. Like a guy you see the skill set, Warren. We've seen the skill set ever since he was at Ohio State, and just a guy who you see it, but it just don't translate. That 1 year in Brooklyn when he made the All-Star, he made the All-Star team. He had something to play for, but he's just so chill, and so he come. I just don't see a championship club, even though the play-in tournament went real well for them. LeBron was at his highest level, AD was at his highest level. Reeves played well. I looked at that team in person for the first time, or for a second, I saw some in-season tournament and thought, man, they might need a shake-up. They got guys. Prince. I like Torian Prince. I like Jared Vanderbilt. Hachimura, Austin Reeves a scorer. Christian Wood's out the rotation. Remember, that was supposed to be a difference maker. Jackson Hayes, a guy who's just never developed zero offensive game. I mean, Jackson Hayes is a guy who can't hit an 8-foot jumper. He's in his 4th or 5th year in the league. Like, come on, man. Like, it's great to be an athlete, but if that's all you are in the league, like, you're going to be Bismack Biyombo. You're going to be a guy who just bounces around and helps out here and there. So, to me, they got to make a change.
I mean, I think it's really interesting because going into the season, a lot of us, and yours truly included, is like, oh, well, they do have a lot of guys, and these guys potentially could fit together. And I think a lot of that was maybe off the equity Pelinka had built at the trade deadline last year, where the Lakers really turned things around after they moved Westbrook. So it's like, all right, well, he kind of knows what he's doing. He re-signed this one. He brought this one in. All these parts seem to fit. Cam Reddish, et cetera, especially for the price that they got him at.
Cam Reddish, who played well.
Yeah.
Nothing against Cam Reddish. It seems like he's found a home there.
Yeah. So, I mean, going into it, like, all right, but I think, as you alluded to me, there was signs of trouble the first 2 weeks into the season when there's like, oh, we need a third guy. I was like, well, wait a minute. You just brought in 9 guys. And none of these guys make it work. And as so you feel that you're at a championship level, but you're seeing that here now. Hence the Dejounte Murray, potential trade rumors. Again, I'm sure they're still going to be sniffing around in Chicago in whatever capacity, whether that's Levine or DeRozan, Caruso, whatever. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago as well, too. We'll see how our friends in the Purple and Gold ultimately fare and what they ultimately do here to improve their roster. But this is the Boston Celtics podcast, so we're going to get to more Celtics news here right after the break. Again, make sure you're tapping in with my guy G Washburn Globe on Twitter/X. Follow me at Shaw Sports NBA. We'll be right back here on Believe in Celtics. And we're back here and Believe in Celtics. Go shifting our attention here now to Boston and things that have happened with this roster here since the last time we had our show. So last time we spoke, we were previewing the games in LA. As Gary alluded to in the outset here, 2 games in LA, 2 wins. Beat the Clippers pretty handily without Kawhi Leonard, and then a Christmas Day performance that was interesting because I heard you, G. I saw you on Twitter as well too, talking. But it was so interesting that the halftime show of the Lakers game was talking about Boston shooting too many threes. Like Stephen A. and Wilbon were like beside themselves with the amount of threes that were going on. I was watching the game with my family, and I had a counter in my head. I think it was sometime in the second quarter, and I was talking to my son. I said, "Look, they've shot 10 straight possessions, 10 straight threes. They haven't even tried to shoot a mid-range or even get to the basket, and the Lakers got back into the game at that point. So that to me, I think, was really interesting. But it is amazing, and it's so great when it's going down. But there seems to be something about this that even now other media are kind of catching on to Boston's 3-point affinity, let's call it. I think for now. What was your thoughts? Kind of more on that standpoint, and like again, the Clippers game we can kind of tuck away, but the Celtics responded in the third quarter of that Lakers game after shooting too many threes in probably both of our opinions in that second quarter when they weren't falling. They shifted things up. They got to the basket some in and out basketball. Then the threes did start to come down again as well too. Just how you think the team responded in that second half against the Lakers to put that game away.
Yeah, I just thought that they played smart basketball. They attacked the rim. They got to the free throw line, and they played well defensively. I just think they limited because I was looking. It was like Torian Prince, I think, hit 5 threes, his 5th 3 by the early third quarter. And you're just like, it could be one of those games where he goes off. And I think that was a season high for threes in a game, but he didn't hit another one. And then Hachimura got some a lot of looks. I think he started 0 for 7. I think he hit his last 2 kind of in garbage time. And then LeBron just couldn't fit it. I just think defensively was where I thought the game was won. And you look at it, and I think what we've seen is the Celtics can win different ways. And if you look at the Clippers game, they shot 53 3-pointers, okay? They made 25. They shot the lights out. They shot 47% from 3. If you shoot 53s and you hit 47 of them, Warren, we all know that's probably going to mean you're going to win the game. Against the Lakers, they hit 13. They were 13 for 42, 31%. But they shot 50% from the field. They attacked the 2-point line. attack the rim. I'm sorry. They got to the free throw line 28 times. They picked up 11. Like, they did all the little things you have to do to win. They stepped up and were good defensively. So to me, if you look at the games that they were most dominant offensively and they were impressive, the Kings game, they shot 42 threes. And the Lakers game, they shot 42 threes. That's not a lot for them, as we know. They can go in the 50s. They went to 58 against the Warriors and 53 against the Clippers. I thought the Lakers game was an example of the impact of Porzingis. Okay, the impact of Drew Holiday and Derek White attacking the rim, and then them being selective with their threes. Yeah, did they take a lot? But I've seen this team take more than 42, so I didn't think 42 was all that much. Right?
Today's NBA, right?
Today's NBA and today's Celtics, right? 42 is a low number, but people who haven't seen them is like, that's a lot of threes, and I get it. It is a lot of threes, and in the game maybe 10 years ago, but for this team, it's not a lot. And I thought that they were impressive. They scored at the rim. Let me do my math here. They were 33 for 49 at the rim, and sorry, in 2-pointers. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's how you win ball games. And they hit 21 free throws, so they got to the free throw line. So to me, they were overall good. And then defensively, the Lakers were solid at times, but the Lakers kind of felt, if you look at the Joe Mazzulla, formula, 25-point quarters. He loves those. The Lakers had 2 of those, 25 points or under. So if you're the Celtics, a good defensive game along with a strong offensive game at the rim and on twos, victory.
For sure. And I think in another way too, a lot of things to talk about that game, but we'll keep pressing. I mean, Porzingis was immense. He played a great basketball game, struggled from his actual spot. He had a lot of great open looks from the 3-point line and didn't hit all of those shots ultimately go down and push that percentage up. But I think just even what he did to get into the lane, to get to the free throw line at times as well too, was immense. It was a great, I wouldn't say a coming out party because I think that the word is out here, but national TV game to see the way Derek White performed as well too. Even the television broadcast just talking about how immense he was, the intangibles, all the things that he does, even blocking shots as a guard as well too. And we will have to get to that in I think in another episode as we were able to. But let's transition here now. Overall good road trip for the C's. They come home now. 3 games here over the next week. Two at home. Detroit Pistons, Toronto Raptors, and the San Antonio Spurs on New Year's Eve, if you will, too, against the phenom, Wembanyama. So the problem here is you come off of that road trip, you feel pretty good, right? Well, what are they, like 8 of their 7 or 8 of their last 9 W's here right now? So they're riding a high, but this Detroit Pistons team is riding the lowest of lows, and they are desperate. A lot of things can. This is like, if this has trap game written all over it, for me, coming off the West Coast trip, the Pistons 27 in a row at home. You're undefeated at home. There's so many things in the ethos here. So I'm sure you were at practice and we'll be at shoot around and all those things. What have you garnered anything from the Celtics perspective? Like, hey, not us. We don't want to be the ones where this streak ends.
Well, as they released today, like Jason and Jalen are both questionable. Jalen with that back injury he sustained against the Lakers when LeBron kneed him in the back, a play I really have never seen before.
Yeah, weird.
That was an NFL type play. And then Jason with left ankle management. He sprained his ankle against the Warriors. Tweaked it a little bit against the Clippers. And when he's fouled I think he got fouled on 3-pointers 3 times. He fouled on one of those 3-pointers. So do you sit those guys and get ready for a rough and tumble game against Toronto? Do you take a chance? Like, I think the Celtics, and I think if you're Joe Mazzulla, you put all your chips in the middle and say, listen, guys, like, we cannot lose this game. We do not want to be on SportsCenter for the wrong reason. We do not want to be the headlines. We don't want them celebrating our court. We do not want them to break the streak here. And then you're talking about the Elias, the game, Warren, might be the biggest, maybe one of the biggest point spreads ever in the history of the league. Now, surprise, I've seen over the years 16.5. This might be 20 plus. If you, depending on if Tatum and Brown play, this might be 20 plus.
That has to push the line somewhat.
Yes, right. This could be the highest point spread because you're talking about a team 23-6 against a team 2-28. But they've played competitively. They've just kind of fallen apart in the fourth quarter of a couple of games. The games against Brooklyn, the games against Utah. So you're right, Warren. A trap game. If you're the Celtics, I think their mentality is let's get this one. We can maybe rest a guy here or there against Toronto, then get ready for that San Antonio trip that also ends in Oklahoma City, which will be a juggernaut of a game against the Thunder. But you look at the Celtics, they play two of the league's worst teams in the next 3 games. You got to start getting just stealing. Hey, let's get those wins. Let's take advantage because they've had a really hard schedule, right? If you had to play Detroit, have to play San Antonio, have had to play a lot of the league's bad teams. And now the league's struggling teams are going to start coming up on their schedule. The Utah comes up. They got 2 with Indiana, then they got a game at Milwaukee, which will be interesting in a couple of weeks. So to me, if I'm the Celtics, and I think their mentality is, let's not lose. Let's not take this lightly. Let's not lose this one. I think they know if you punch first and you get them down, you probably knock them out. But if you let them hang around, and Cade Cunningham had 41, he's a special talent.
They're trying.
And they got 8 lottery picks. I just did they have 8 on their roster, Warren, 8 guys taking the lottery. That's talent. Now, are they good? No. Do they have talented young players? Yes. Do they play together well? No. Okay. Are many of them disappointments? Yes. But for that one night, it could happen. You got to be careful.
No, I agree 1,000% on that one because, I don't think their mix of talent makes a whole lot of sense, especially with the bigs, the front court there. But they're desperate. This is not like the trust the process 76ers. The Pistons are trying to win. They're trying to win, especially now, as they've in this dubious distinction here, with all these losses mounted against them. And Monty Williams, who I think is one of the better just individuals, in the league, it's really, really rough to kind of see him going through this situation here right now. It's really tough. But hey, all's fair in love and war. And not in the Garden, sir. That cannot happen. That cannot happen.
Yeah, you got to make sure you gotta take this game seriously. I think they will. They got 2 days off. You're right. Coming home, you're 14-0. You want to defend home court. And the worst team in probably since those process Sixers come in, but you can't. It's too easy to take it lightly. I think even the most confident Celtic says, you know what? This is just too easy for me to let's not sleep on this.
Yeah, no, you absolutely cannot. Then, before we close out here, again, Toronto Raptors come back. So third meeting against the Raptors here. Again, Raptors always tough. They've been slipping a little bit, but again, we know they have size. A mostly healthy thing going into the matchup with Pirtle and Nobi and Scotty Barnes playing his best basketball of his young career. Siakam maybe taking a little bit of a step back as Barnes is starting to elevate, but this is a tough Raptors team. They're going through their own struggles here as well too. I think their head coach was caught up in a media situation the other night and talking about their rotation, and we don't have Steph Curry coming off the bench and so forth. So again, another team that, while talented and while large in terms of size, another team Boston should be able to beat, especially at home. But
yes,
in a back-to-back, off of what we don't know how that Pistons game will ultimately go, I think that's going to be another tough matchup as well too. Your thoughts on that one really quickly?
Yeah. I mean, Toronto. If anything, Warren, they're big and physical with Barnes and Anunoby, and Siakam and Pirtle. And then Gary Trent can always do it. Dennis Schroeder always got, axe to grind against his former team. So they can put together every now and then a really good game. Yeah. And right now, obviously, they're 11-18. They're 3-9 away from Toronto. They're a team that's been a disappointment in transition. We all know, what are they going to do with Anunoby? What are they going to do with Siakam? Are they going to rebuild around those guys or just kind of blow it up like other teams have done? They've been in between. It's like, okay, Toronto, this is not a title team, and this is probably not a playoff team. What are you guys going to do? And you're not going to get major free agents to take even though you might have the max, you might get one here and there, but you're not going to get, unfortunately, and Toronto's a great city, you're not going to get major free agents to get to Canada like that on that level. So you've got to figure out how to make assets, because you let Fred VanVleet go for nothing. You let him just walk. That was a big mistake, in my opinion. I think if you knew he was going to leave, you get some kind of something for him, right? Draft picks, one of those young players in Houston, just someone who can help build your roster there. But I think the Raptors, it's a dangerous game. I've been around enough Celtic Raptor games to know that Toronto's physical. They do not like the Celtics, especially after that that challenge that Mazzulla did that irked their coach and irked Schroeder. So there's going to be some, ill will. They're rested. The Celtics coming off a back-to-back. So it should be a good, interesting game. Not an easy game.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it. Sometimes you just throw the records out because there's just an axe to grind. I think with certain teams, and Boston has that reputation. I don't know if you saw, and this is kind of taking it off tangent, but maybe an off-air conversation, but the OG podcast started. Mike Miller and Udonis Haslam, and there's a segment in there. I'm gonna text it to you. Haslam just more or less says, "I do not like that team." Yeah. It's just like he does not like Boston. Yeah. And I'd be curious to kind of like learn at some point, kind of like what that sentiment is, kind of like league wide with certain players, whatever. Like some people just feel like the fans, but anyway, that's a conversation for another time, another time. Before we wrap up here, the last game that we'll preview here before the new year, they'll potentially see the rookie of the year incumbent potentially in Victor Wembanyama coming in. What are you looking forward to that? Well, not coming in. They'll be in San Antonio. Excuse me. That game is on the road, and Celtics have had some interesting times in San Antonio over the years. Yeah. But this is a different Spurs team. Very young, still trying to find their way here. Obviously, Wemby is the star attraction there. But you don't want to end up on his highlight reel as well, too, right? That's a rookie. He can do what he needs to do, but you got to get that W as well, too, especially with OKC. Two nights from that.
Important game, Warren. And Wemby, I mean, the Spurs are talented. It's kind of they shouldn't be as bad. Yeah. You got Keldon Johnson, you got Devin Vassell, you got Trey Jones, you got Wembanyama, you got Zach Collins, you got Sohan, you got Doug McDermott coming off the bench. You've got guys who can play the game. I'm not talking about they should be, what are they, 15 and 14, but maybe, they should have maybe 8-9 wins as opposed to 4, right? They should be better than they are. So I saw them. I watched the game on TV when they beat the Lakers at home. So they're another dangerous team, and the crowd's going to be into it. New Year's Eve, Wembanyama. I don't know. Does he match up with Porzingis? How does that look? But another kind of dangerous game for the Celtics before they spend their New Year's, I'm sure, there, then head to Oklahoma City. So they got to be careful over these next 3 or 4 games, Warren, and not trip up. No. Don't do what you've done in the past. Take care of business, and then make it easy on yourself.
Absolutely. Got to stay healthy, play the game to the best of your ability. And I think with effort, defense and rebounding, they can definitely win all 3 of these games. But again, they will not be easy, as all 3 of these teams have something that they're playing for. Pistons trying to break that losing streak. The Raptors and Spurs both have size, and that has bothered Boston in the past. So we'll see how they fare. That'll do it here for this week's edition of Believe in Celtics. As always, make sure you follow my guy, G. Washburn, on X at G. Washburn Globe. Follow me at Shaw Sports NBA. We appreciate you so much for tapping here with Believe in Celtics. Hope you enjoy the new format. We'll definitely catch you in the new year, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.